topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Legacy Leavers series on Success Secrets Exposed. Tune in live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time or Wednesday mornings in Australia on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. The series showcases experts, changemakers, and disruptors leaving a lasting legacy with those sharing their wisdom with the world.
Good morning, good day, and good evening to you all, and welcome to another episode of Success Secrets Exposed. Today we're going to be talking with the Book Alchemist, Amy Collette. Now, her legacy is to elevate the positive vibration of the planet, one transformational author at a time, by fostering deep human connections through storytelling. Amy helps impact-driven leaders turn their legacies into print, guiding them through her Unleash Your Inner Author coaching framework. Now, Amy is as passionate about personal development and personal growth as I am. She lives in Denver, where she enjoys the outdoors, great conversations, and creating art, some of which she never shows anyone. So there's going to be a story there too. So please help me welcome to the show, Amy Collette.
Yay. Thanks so much, Sally. Wonderful to be here with you.
Thank you so much for joining me. I'm super excited about our conversations and diving into the realm of book authoring and the catalyst that it becomes for both the author as well as the reader. So thank you.
Yes, I'm excited to talk about that. It's my favorite topic.
Yeah, beautiful. I'd love to just sort of start and frame the conversation up around how did you become known as the Book Alchemist, and what does that title mean to you?
Oh, I love that question.
Yeah,
people tend to like that title. They don't quite know what it means, but it has some magic in it, right? Because alchemy is that magic. And I love that title because it really comes from the magic that happens when people write their books. Yeah. You know, of course, you can get technical about it and say, oh, yes, there are frameworks and structures and this and that. But what really happens is that people become authors as they write their book. And that in itself is a personal development journey, sometimes that people don't expect, but it happens every time.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've definitely seen that at different times when even for myself, if I look at myself, even my journey of, writing more content or writing an article, writing something quite deep that you can look back on after you've had the hissy fits of writing, because writing's not my favorite thing to do. And then you write something really quite profound and you sort of go, oh my God, did I just do that? But it's the bits, the ugly bits that happen before the magic happens.
Yes, I have a client who just wrote her book. It's featured in my new podcast series, and she calls it The Good, the Bad, and the Grumpy.
Love, yeah, totally true. So I'd love to actually talk a little bit more around I know what, and I'd love to get onto your framework and those sorts of things, but let's have a little bit of a talk about what happens, both the ugly, the grumpy, and all those sorts of things as an author when they're preparing to be an author and then when they become that author. Can you share some insights around that, please?
Yes, thanks for that question. I did some market research last year, and I was really I was not surprised, but I was surprised by how often I got this answer when I said, what is the biggest thing holding you back from getting your book out there, from getting your message out to a larger audience? And I think 8 out of 10 people said, I just don't know where to start.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So really, that's what's holding so many people back. from writing their books. They may be carrying their book around for 5, 8, 10 years because they're just kind of stuck. I think we all think we have this knowledge or this ability to just sit our butts in a chair in front of a computer and write. It can't be that hard, right?
Yeah.
But people tend to not be able to do it on their own. There is a lot to it. And it's just like, I compare it to building a house, right, Sally? You wouldn't just take a couple of sticks and start pounding them together to make your beautiful house. There would be some planning and some thought that goes into it, and a lot of clarity first about what you actually want. So when it's your message, it's your brand, it's your heart that you're putting out there, it is great to get some support along the way.
Yeah, very much so. And I think if I love the building block analogy. I know for myself, if I come in and sit in front of a computer screen, it's all gone, 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 gone. But if I create some framework, and my thing for anything I do is storyboarding it, which is we'll get to the story side of it, but with post-it notes on my whiteboard in my hallway. And I love that I can be messy first to find the structure. But I definitely can't create, sit in front of the computer screen and create. It's got to be the messy board with post-it notes and whatever to get some form of a framework. So, yeah. So that's actually interesting. People don't know where to start. So how do you help them start?
Right. So I came upon this, if I can share a little quick story.
Please.
I come from a writing and editing background.
Yeah.
So when I wrote my first book and published it, it's called The Gratitude Connection. People who were writing their books started coming to me and saying, "Hey, can you help me publish this book?"
Yeah.
And so I'd get these manuscripts and I'd look at them, and I had to deliver often some kind of bad news because they think they're done. And as an editor, I know that there's so much more work to be done because they hadn't done the planning up front. Right. So that's where I said, oh, people need help at the beginning, not just at the end. They actually need help getting their story out. And I say out of your head and onto the page. So I created frameworks and this kind of stuff. But what really helps is getting clarity first.
Yes.
So I focus on 4 things. The first one is getting clear on your mission. What is your actual message and how do you want it to help people? Yeah. The second one is understanding your ideal readers, or what I call your soulmate readers. They're the ones who are going to get the most out of your book, right? Third is you as an author. What are your goals? What are your dreams? What are the fears that might come up, the barriers that might keep you from doing this? And then when we get all that beautiful clarity on all those things that are so interwoven, then we can create your roadmap, which is your detailed outline. And often it's sticky notes and index cards and things like that, where you can get things out of your head and create some structure to them. So that's where we start.
Yeah, beautiful. And you've said another word there, which is around the fear elements. And I know that's going to be very, very different for everybody. But that was, I'm sort of, now that you've explained it, I'm not surprised that people get stuck at the start with that, how do I start? But I thought the fear would come up first, but it's actually interesting that it's the structure. And then I suppose then they go through that personal growth experience and that they overcome those fears. So I'd love to hear some information as it relates to what are those sorts of barriers that you help new authors overcome as well.
Well, I deal with this so often that I actually just wrote a book about it. It's the one you see on the shelf behind me called Unleash Your Impact, because I interviewed authors who I've worked with who have overcome all these barriers that I hear about all the time. And they're everything from, I don't know how to start. And I think that alone is masking a bunch of other fears, but it's easier to say, oh, I just don't know how to start. And so that explains it, right? A lot of it is, how do I find the time? People are running businesses, raising families, doing all the things. How do we find time to do it? So there's procrastination, there's
Use
perfectionism.
that word? Don't use that word either. Oh,
Right? Who can't relate to that?
yes.
So there's also a big sort of bucket that a lot of things fall into is imposter syndrome.
Yes, that was the one I've been would have expected based on the conversations I have with authors when we're repurposing their books for them into content.
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
You see that all the time where people, maybe you see this, Sally. I'd be interested to hear
yeah.
if people feel a little cringy about a quote that you pull out of their book or something personal that you want to put from their book onto social media. Do
Mm.
you get people pushing back on you about that?
Yeah, and you've used the perfect word because when I go through the reviewing scenario with them, I literally watch for that it can be very slight, but I can see that cringe. But I know that it's their inner genius, and it's that's the element that their audience are wanting to see, and all those sorts of things. But there is a growing up when someone has that cringe, and
Mhm.
I've certainly had that myself when someone's reverberated what I've said that was powerful that I haven't quite grown into yet.
Right.
There is that cringe factor. So it's and I think too, when you first have your inner genius reflected back in that way, or
Mm.
somebody comments positively on your book, on your manuscript, you haven't really grown into it. You've written it, but you haven't actually embodied or grown into it. So I think there's that element there as well.
Yeah, that's really insightful, Sally, that
Thank you.
maybe we haven't fully grown into it because I know, when you're writing a book, you're in your warm little bubble
Yes.
of your office and just writing your book in your personal space, and it feels very personal, and you're thinking about that ideal person that you want to help. And so you're not thinking of maybe like the huge public, which I hope you're not because it's not for everybody. But when that's reflected back to you, it can spark that insecurity, that imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Can I really say that? Am I qualified to say that? Am I worthy of saying that and putting that out there in the world? It sounds pretty bold.
Absolutely. We've just had a really good question come in, and I think this will relate to the next little series of questions I wanted to ask around storytelling. So we've just had a question come in from the audience. Does anyone write just to write for themselves, and would that sell?
That's kind of a big question,
It is a big question. So
because
let's touch on it where we
I
can.
think we're all writing for ourselves in some way. Right?
Agreed.
So I'll take myself as an example. When I was writing The Gratitude Connection, it's quite a personal book because it's about my journey of coming kind of from a dark place of just being in anxiety all the time and how I found my way out of that through gratitude practices and other small habits that I could just do every day.
Yeah.
And so I was really kind of at first documenting it just for myself. And then I started using it with other people. So I would temper this unqualified yes. You can write just for yourself, and I invite you to do that.
Mm,
Uh, and if you're going to make that public, if you're going to put it out there to the world, to your soulmate readers, think about what they need, or think
mm,
about what they might need. It may also be what you need. So
mm.
a lot of our books have a definite autobiographical or memoir aspect, but then
Definitely.
they also help readers take the lessons into their
Yes.
own lives. So
Yeah.
that's how I would say that might write first for yourself and then come back and go through it and say, okay, how can I make this even more amplified and valuable for my readers?
Yeah, very much so. And I'd answered that also saying that often we unpack our own
Mm,
inner genius. So again, I'm thinking lessons I've learned and those sorts of things. So we unpack something, a thought process, and
yeah,
then we actually realize that there is a structure. We actually have a methodology in doing that.
right.
And that unpacking helps you see the methodology. The methodology helps it to make it easier for other people to understand and follow a methodology, which is why and how a how-to book comes out.
Right.
And from what we do from helping people monetize their content perspective, those sorts of elements can become, a fuller book structure. It could be an online course, it could be a coaching program, and that's where you can sort of monetize those learnings that you have that start very, very insular for yourself, but can become something bigger if that's what you're wanting it to do, for example.
Right. That's great too, Sally, because what happens is when we experience the thing that we want to share,
Mm,
we're doing it without any structure or plan, or it's just kind of
correct.
chaos when we're
Yeah,
going through it, right?
yeah.
So to really serve our readers in a more loving way, we can organize it a little bit better so that they can follow it in a more step-by-step approach that can really help them make the transformation that we made kind of by accident,
Yes,
that we
yes,
stumbled
yes.
on.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is the value of the experience, but also I was with a group of Afro-Australian women on the weekend, and they talked about, you need to love your story. And I think that's so powerful is that through writing for self and writing in general, you start to, understand your story. But then for me, I sort of uh, interpreted that as when you love your story. For me, when I love my story, it enables me to be courageous and then share some of that experience with other people. So I think this is where that whole storytelling element comes into play. So I'd love to you to share and expand more on that. That storytelling and the magic of the human connection that you experience with the authors that you work with and the framework that you help them through.
Right. Yeah, I became really enamored of storytelling and the art of storytelling
Mm,
through a client actually who's writing a book about storytelling in business because
love it.
he's in the insurance business, which sounds like you wouldn't maybe associate storytelling with insurance, right? Seems a
Mm,
little dry and staid, but when they're talking about how insurance can help clients their clients may be calling them on their worst day,
yeah,
you
absolutely.
know, and your insurance person is gonna help you deal with that and navigate that, right?
Mm,
And so the stories are just amazing that they tell, that they get to share and how they've helped people. So that's pretty
absolutely. Mm,
inspirational, really, and so I started reading more about the art of storytelling and got really enamored of that.
mm,
And so, if you look back in history, that's how humans connect.
absolutely. Yes.
Like when you and I first got on a call, we were sharing stories and laughing and having a good time. That's how we were getting to know each other. Just like if we were in the same room having coffee, right? We would be doing the same thing, getting to know each other. And that's
Yes.
what we all do. And we can say, okay, Sally's someone I want to hang out with again.
Mm,
Or Sally and I don't have all that much in common. Maybe we'll move on.
mm,
That's how you'd make those decisions is
absolutely.
through getting to know each other. So when you're writing a book, when you're even doing social media, you're creating content of any kind, you're making a connection with the
Yes.
person. So even a personal story of your own will help spark a memory of theirs or a
Yes.
connection of they can say, "Oh, I've experienced something similar,"
Mm,
or "My spouse has," or "My best friend has."
mm,
They've got some connection to you through
mm,
your story. So, even though sometimes people think, "Oh, I don't want the book to be all about me," or "I don't want my stories to be all about me." They're actually not.
yeah.
They're about connecting with your audience.
Yeah, and for me, from a visual storytelling perspective, we talk a lot about, if we've chosen the right imagery in the social media, the image positions the viewer. So, in other words, the viewer sees themselves in the image, which is that deep human connection. And we mirror that strategy from the greats like Nike and Apple and those sorts of people that use really great imagery that's emotive. But
Yes.
but the image is a different version of storytelling. But this is why storytelling of your stories in your book is so profound in creating that deep connection, which then helps create that transformation for the reader now. So we've got the writers or the author's transformation as they go through that process, but this is where you as the author start to create the transformations for your reader.
Right. You talked about earlier, you used the word courageous. To be
Mm,
courageous. I say vulnerable, brave, courageous, all those words about sharing your personal story.
yeah.
Because I have a visual in my head that I like to explain about how when we're telling a story, whether we're on stage or on a podcast or in the pages of a book, we are opening the door to our readers to show them the possibility, the field of possibilities behind that door, so that
Mm,
if they choose to, they can walk through that door on their own and find their own transformation. We're
yeah.
just hopefully the catalyst for that.
Yes. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah. So let's now talk as it relates to some of the. I want to go barriers, but I also want to I'm going to use the word transformation. I'd love to hear a little bit more about some of the stories as it relates to people that you've worked with and experiences that you've seen where someone's come in as that tentative author with all of their stuff, and then what the impact is when their book's been out there and, the feedback that they've given. So if you can just give us a bit of a journey story, that would be awesome.
Yes, I have so many.
I
Um,
bet.
so I'll use the story example of an author named Diane Kelly. She wrote a book called Soulfire Woman.
Mhm.
Very powerful title, right?
Yeah, it just gave me
And
goose.
yeah, it's a wonderful book. And she had written a version of that book to begin with. And it had a lot of mixed metaphors, and it had great bones.
Bones. Yeah, I thought
Like they say of an old house that needs some work, they say, oh, it has great bones. And that's exactly what her book had. Her concepts were at the core were just absolutely solid. And
mm,
she just needed some fleshing out and some really thinking out how she wanted to explain those things. And so
mm,
we worked together, and she just, it came out of her bit by bit until she had this whole entire visual of this soul fire woman.
yeah.
And then she could tie everything back to that. And so I just saw through this process, her confidence just absolutely blossom, right?
Mm,
As she got more clear and owned her message more. You can relate to that, right? Because you have to, it goes back to what you were talking about, Sally, with stepping into that place where you are your message, you really
mm,
embody it.
mm.
So she has not only the book, she has programs, she has a beautiful community, and she's doing more and more content creation right now, really unleashing the writer, because she really does like to write and
Yes.
communicate that way and connect in that way. So it's just going on and on, even several years after she wrote her book, and it's just a joy to see that continue.
Yeah, beautiful. And I think that's the important piece in there when you've got that real crystal clarity of who your ideal target market is, or who your specific, woman is in her case, and you can see her and you can see the embodiment of her. It's so much easier to have that personal relationship as the writer and the person that's writing content for her. It actually narrows it down. But at the same time, it actually expands the opportunities, because you can actually speak and touch the soul of that individual, knowing that there's multiples of those individuals there. But by having that, that narrowing of a specificity, it just unlocks, as you said, the opportunity of what's in the book, and which is the insights that you've created specifically for this person.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
beautifully said. I love how you said when you narrow it down, it expands the opportunities, because people are afraid to
Yeah.
narrow their niche because they think they're going to leave someone out.
Yeah.
And my authors don't want to leave anyone out. But
don't.
we have to know who we're talking to so that we can reach them effectively.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly right. And I think that's, and if I look at my processes and the stuff that I do with clients as well, you know, when someone comes with something, as you said, it's got good bones, it takes somebody with fresh eyes to see those good bones, to ask the right questions. Because as creators, we effervesce with ideas, you know, lots and lots of ideas, but it's, you know, being asked the right question to get to that level of specificity, because fresh eyes will actually see the repeating patterns. And then, you know, you and I will go, right, it's let's circle to that. And that's where all of a sudden it will just expand out, because we've hit the soul, if that
Yes.
makes sense. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And that's something that you and I think have in common as maybe a superpower, that we
Yes.
can take someone else's content and really drill down and see the beauty in it,
Mm.
and what is absolutely going to be most powerful to talk about to get more people to engage.
Yeah, absolutely. We've just had another question come in from the audience, and I'm going to let you take this your direction, and I'll just come in on the end. It's, does the reach come with marketing or the writing?
Okay, this is the perfect question for us to tag team on, right, Sally? Because I will happily state that marketing is not my first genius. I am more tuned into the writing aspect. So I think the two very much work together, but I'll let you riff on the marketing, and
Mhm.
I'll take the writing piece. I think a lot of times we say that we want to have a book, and there are some folks out there that are creating books with AI and all kinds of things. That's not the kind of books we're talking about. We're talking about books for the soul, right? They connect heart to heart with people. And so the content has to be absolutely solid and engaging, but also readable. So most of our books are written in a very casual conversational tone, as if we are sitting in a room having a conversation, you
Yeah.
know, because I know, like, for one of my authors, her name is Dr. Sarah Hart. She wrote a book called The Upside of Downsizing, Getting to Enough is the subtitle.
Mm.
Yeah, and she has people over and over tell her, "Oh, Sarah, it felt like you were just sitting on the couch talking to me." And that's what we're really going for here in most of our books, is that real connection. But at the same time, the content has to be a little bit different than we've heard before, and it needs to come from the author's perspective, you
Mm.
know, so that it's absolutely fresh to the person reading it, because they've never heard that take on it before,
Yeah.
right? So they can see something new in the story, in the perspective, and then they can maybe have an aha moment or an epiphany of their own as they're reading it. So the content has to be actually really solid, and of course, well edited and well presented and all that kind of thing. And then, you know, the marketing comes in. And actually, I tell people to start marketing the minute or before they start writing their book. So I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, I'm going to actually agree with everything that you said, obviously, but I'm also going to say that the reach in the end goal of reach actually does come from the writing. Because
Mm,
if you haven't written a good book with good structure, and haven't nailed the stories and nailed who your ideal reader is and those sorts of things, you haven't got a lot there to work with. You've just got another book. So to me, the impact comes from the writing, but you can't just write. You actually do need to be able to market that book. And I see lots of people with incredible inner genius books that go, oh, I'm just about to launch my book. It's 2 weeks out. I'm going to let everybody know. I'm going to put some posts on social media. And it's like, but have you built a list? Who are we marketing this book to? Because, you know, there's more to it there. So strategically, I agree, you know, letting people know that you're writing a book, bring these people on when you know who your ideal target market is, they will want to be on the journey with you. They will absolutely want to celebrate the fact that you're being courageous enough to write that book firstly. And I think that in itself is a massively missed opportunity. But then if you go back down to the brass tacks of when you've written the book, and if the book's impactful and it's got some great teachable elements in there, and you've got transformation, then that's where somebody like me will come in and actually help you create the content to monetize it, to then lead into other things if you're selling into other programs. So I believe a book is the beginning of an ecosystem of what are you going to be doing next? Do you want to be speaking and sharing your message? Do you want to get on more podcasts? It's not a book for a book's sake. It's a book for a transformational ripple effect that will change the world.
Exactly.
And that's done with marketing and great writing running alongside each other.
Yes.
And being brave enough to seize all of the opportunities that come when you put yourself out in that manner, in an elegant, authentic you way.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Sally. And I love that you use the word ecosystem, because I explain it the exact same way.
Yeah.
I say that your book is part of your whole ecosystem. And, the marketing is absolutely side by side with it. And, for you, the genius that you do with taking a book and creating so much beautiful content from it, you rely on the writing to carry that.
Yeah. Yes. I can't do what I do without great writing. So the writing is the pinnacle. But where just carrying on from that is when I find from when I'm working with the authors at the other end is they've written the book, then they've gone through the personal development process after someone's suggested all of the edits, and then they're rewriting it, and they've just gone through this exhaustive but also profound change, that when some little bright bunny like me comes along and says, do you realize you've got 2 years worth of content in that book? They're like, don't make me read that. Don't make me look at that book again. Don't make me read that book, because they've grown from it. But in saying that, there is absolutely 2 years worth of content in a book. It's just that you perhaps have got bored with it by now, or you can't and don't want to see it. But it is the pinnacle of what you do next. And there's so much wisdom, heartfelt wisdom within it. Yeah.
Yes. That kind of brings us full circle when you said you've got to love your story. And that's absolutely true. And that's more your story, your person, that's the story that makes up you. But it is absolutely true that people get sick of reading the book over and over and over again, because, with every edit, you've got to read it again. I'm a big believer in having the author have absolute control during the process, so that it doesn't feel like their book got taken away and magically, changed, and now it's not their book anymore. I want people are involved in every aspect of the editing and the cover design and all those kinds of things, so that they do feel absolutely, excited and proud, but also they've read it a whole lot of times. So they're happy to hand it over and have someone else do something with it.
Yeah, very much so. We'll come back to that later, but I'd love, as we've talked on, the process, I'd love you to be able to share a little bit more about your Unleash Your Inner Author framework, so the audience gets an understanding of, how you're able to help them bring this book and then start to create this ecosystem around their wisdom.
Right. Yeah. So Sally, I've already explained that first part of it, the clarity parts. That's where we start. And then you begin the writing. Some people are a little frustrated with that I just want to get started writing, but I've seen people be so much more successful if they do that clarity work up front, because then it will eliminate things like more rounds of edits and rewriting the thing, using that system, then they don't have to rewrite it at the end. That's the whole point. So then I work with them on their writing and provide templates and frameworks that they can use to actually create their content. So you'll see a lot of books that have a similar format for each of their chapters. They're laid out similarly.
Mm.
So I love that, and I've really come to adopt that approach because it not only helps the author, but it helps the reader. It builds trust when the
Just
reader,
write that down.
yeah, when the reader knows what to expect. You know,
Mm.
you're taking me through a cadence. A reader may not even notice that.
Mm.
But it's a feeling of there's a similarity between this and what I've read before, and in terms of how it's laid out and presented. So it just builds this feeling of comfort and safety with your
Mm.
reader, because you're asking them to explore some areas that may be a little scary for them.
Mm.
It's self-discovery and personal development for them too. And so
Mm.
they need to have that sort of safe space that you can create in your book. And that's one of those little techniques that creates that deeper connection with your readers.
Yeah.
So that's how it all pans out until you're done. And then you go into the publishing aspect of getting the book out there to the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that cadence and that importance of, familiarity is we talk about that from a brand element, having the right brand elements. Highly recognizable brands have a strong consistency, both visually and as well as an online presence and those sorts of things. But that does transpose so importantly into a way in which a book is actually structured and then written, because there's comfort. It provides that comfort and that, oh my God, they get me. It's safe. It's safe, and that's so important for the types of books that we're writing, authors are writing, as it relates to personal development, etc.
Right.
Excellent. And part of your program is also coaching as well as community. So talk us through some of those elements as well.
Right. So I have sort of two kinds of communities. So I teach the course in a small cohort where it does create an intimacy, a tight bonding between just a few people as we go through that coaching system. And so people are creating their books and talking it out. And one of the beautiful things about that is that they can see along the way other people are dealing with the same kinds of imposter syndrome and time management issues and all the things that come up as they're writing the book. So we always want to feel like we belong, like we're not alone. And that group cohort really provides a beautiful support as they go through that. I also have a larger author community, which is made up of both aspiring authors and published authors. And so that is, we have a happy hour every month, and we get together and have these beautiful, deep discussions about, because everyone's involved and interested in personal development. We don't do a lot of chit chat. We just go deep right away. And it's really fun to explore all the different topics that come up, not only from being an author, but there was a lot of discussion about marketing and how do we continue to build engagement and excitement about our messages, and how do we get out there and speak and be on podcasts and do all the things that helps keep that conversation moving and growing.
Yeah, it's all about the visibility and the credibility online and the consistency around that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But it's also in a community, as you know, it's that beautiful support that you can give and get.
Yes,
Because sometimes people, when they're just about to launch their book, they're a little nervous because now it's real, now they're actually putting it out there to the world, and they get a little cringy or feeling like they want to hide a little bit. And the other authors who have already been through that can kind of walk them through what that looks like and support them on that journey and just say, you've done it. Let's celebrate that.
Yeah. And isn't it so important to celebrate those simple steps all the way through? And I think that's why I love communities, especially when they're as tight knit as what yours is. It's that ability to and the remembering of celebrating the small wins along the way with a collective. There's
Yes.
power in that alone.
Yes, there is, and sometimes it's just a matter of reflecting back to people where they've come from. And as a coach, I can do that, but as a community member going through it at the same time, they can say, hey, remember 8 weeks ago when you did this and we're dealing with this problem and now you're over the hump, you've gotten all this way and now you have a manuscript to show for it. It's people go, oh yeah, thank you. I didn't remember that.
And we don't, because we're going forward, but those milestones are significant. And from my perspective, those milestones and remembering those milestones and having somebody be able to reflect that back to you is the next conversation as it relates to it. All the conversations will circle back to the growth that person has had. And it's important to have been able to recognize those, because when you're a guest on a podcast after you've written a book, it's that stuff that you've been through to get the book out there that people want to know about. That's why you get invited on stages and guesting and all those sorts of things. And I share that because it's that stuff that people think is boring, but there's money in the boring.
Sure.
Wow. I've got one more question, another question, because I knew this conversation would get right into it. Is you and your authors and myself, we've always been on that never-ending, continuing quest for personal development. But how has your journey of personal development influenced the work that you've done? So it's a little bit of a backstory. So we've sort of got started at the backstory and we've done a lot of stuff in the middle. How has it influenced what you're doing and where you'll continue to craft that legacy piece for yourself?
That's a beautiful question.
Sorry, you said you dive deep, so I just thought I'd go deep.
That's great. I'm with you. I'm diving in right with you, Sally. So yeah, after I wrote my first book, The Gratitude Connections, definitely a personal development book, and brought together so much of my seeking over the years. I think I started reading personal development books when I was 12 or 14 or something. I've been on this journey a long time. And so when it came time to start helping people actually write their books, I'd been there. I'd been in those shoes before, and I didn't want to just go with the technical details of here's how you write a book. You sit down and you do this and this and this, and just give a procedural kind of manual, right? There are plenty of books out there that tell you that. But when you're actually stepping into a new role, this role of author, to call yourself an author, do you remember how a little bit weird that felt when you first published? Right? You're like, author? I'm not an author. All those other people are authors, right? So you're becoming that as you're writing the book. And I understand the imposter syndrome and all the scary things that pop up. I call them fear dragons that circle around, and there are opportunities to work through to find something else, to learn something, and to dive deeper into our own personal development. So all those things definitely inform my coaching, because I want to be not just your biggest cheerleader as your coach. I am your biggest cheerleader, but I'm also going to say the hard things. Yeah. I think it really helps to have that person who's willing to basically love you enough to say, hey, let's look at this. This first part of the chapter is absolutely brilliant. It's super strong. It's profound. It made me cry in a good way. Now, in this other part, can you see how it's not complete? Like, let's talk about how we can really amp this up to bring it to the level of the rest of your writing. Now, if you don't have that kind of companion or guide along your journey, then you're going to be in that situation of doing a lot of rewriting at the end and that kind of thing. But as you have that along the way, you're becoming a better writer. You're becoming more of you, because you are doing the personal development on the fly. It's not just after you've written your book and you put it out there. It's during the process. And so for me, it's so beautiful for me to be able to give that kind of support and feedback. And people are asking, I want this to be absolutely great for my readers. How can I make it better? How can
Yeah.
I be the best at what I'm doing so that I can be really proud when I step up and claim that role of author?
Mm, mm, beautiful. And I think for me, having had this conversation with you and spoken with you before, and I love that you use the word seeking at the beginning of that, because, you know, when you're on a quest of personal development, it's not a word I've used, but it's certainly the activity that I do is that seeking. And I think that you absolutely are the epitome of that companion. And I think with your project management and your editing and the conversations we have, I can absolutely hear that you actually save authors a lot of time going through, I'm going to call it, based on my scenario, the chaos theory, where you've just got stuff going everywhere. And it's great and it's fun doing that, but that can become tiring before you've actually got to the meat of what you're actually wanting to deliver. So that clarity piece and you being the companion and helping them understand the mission and all of that level of specificity actually does simplify the whole process, because it mitigates a lot of the unnecessary, but it gives them a much better, deeper, more impactful outcome for themselves, but also, as you said, for their reader as well. So that's just extraordinary. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for reflecting that back to me, because I think it really is, it's so important to get that kind of support,
Mm,
so that you don't stay in the chaos, because
yes.
when you're in the chaos, it never gets done.
It's easier to stay there, isn't it?
It
It's so easy to stay there.
Yeah,
Guilty
and
as
it's uncomfortable. You know, sometimes it can be that creative chaos, fun type of thing, but then it gets exhausting to be in
correct.
chaos all the time, and then, you just wanna move on and do something else.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it is a big project and it takes some staying power. So the more you can stay out of that overwhelm of chaos,
Necessary.
the better and more healthy you're gonna stay as an author as
Yes.
you create the book.
Yeah, brilliant. So I've got a couple of minutes left. I would love for you to recap anything that needs recapping, help anybody that needs to know, you know, what's their first steps, where do they need to start? When someone, let me ask the proper question. Sorry, my mind's going. I've got 60 questions I still want to ask. Sorry. When somebody most commonly comes to you, what do they come to you with? So when that author is coming to you at that starting point, just describe that to us and then tell them how they can connect with you and go from there.
Yeah, generally, I'm really surprised at how passionate people are about their message and that they wanna get it out there. They wanna leave a legacy. They wanna make a difference. I mean, often my authors say, "If this changes only one life, it's
Yeah,
worth it." You
yeah,
know, this is the kind of people I love to work with. And so, as I mentioned at the top, the most common thing is I don't know how to start. And so they start with me in my program, but I've also written this book called Unleash Your Impact that helps with that beginning stages, helps getting started with the clarity so that they can start thinking about, what do I really believe? What is the most important things? Because generally people don't have too little content. They have
yeah,
too much, right? So we need to we need to narrow it down, right? So that
yeah,
it is really impactful instead of just everywhere. It's not chaos.
yeah, yeah,
So that's where I love to start with people is to say, okay, let's really get clear, even clearer on your message than you think it is now,
yeah,
because they always do clarify and dig deeper. So
yeah.
that's the good place to start.
Absolutely, thank you. And we've had your the link to your book going across the screen. And I'll just repeat that there, which is unleashyourinnerauthor.com, and then Unleash Your Impact, which is the book. So if you jump onto our socials, etc., you'll see the link and be able to jump on and grab that book. Certainly do connect with Amy on her website as well. She's got lots of great resources, and there's some really great blogs on there to be able to help you on the process. I was just scribbling down a quote, which, you know, I think it's got some really good legs to it that you just said there, about being impactful, not everywhere. As I look to my desk, that side where all my creativity is, which is everywhere at the moment, but the impact does come from the everywhere, but you do need people to help you select the impactful out of the everywhere. So that's definitely your space, Amy. Thank you.
Beautifully said, Sally. Yes, you got to do a little brainstorming, then we'll narrow it down.
Absolutely, and that's the beautiful process for us as the authors and the content creators. Amy Collette, it's been an absolute pleasure. We are at time. Thank you so much for sharing so much of your wonderful wisdom with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me, Sally. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. We look forward to seeing you again on another episode of Success Secrets Exposed. See you soon. Bye.
Remember, if you want to be sought after and sold out, as well as being known as the obvious expert in your industry, you need to speak with Sally, our host of Success Secrets Exposed. Sally is the founder of Monetize Your Content, a done-for-you content marketing agency that helps you be easy to buy. See you next week on another episode of Success Secrets Exposed. Tune in live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time or Wednesday mornings in Australia on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV.